Before we resume debate, I just want to remind, to advise the member from Regina, Lewvan, that the time for debate on private members' business will expire at 6:30, so I will have to interrupt you, but you will be able to continue your speech at the next time, at the second hour of debate on this on a different day. So resuming debate, reprise de débat, the honourable member for Regina, Lewvan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, since I have only a few minutes, I would like to focus on three key questions. What's the problem? How big is the problem? And what, if anything, is the government doing about it? So what's the problem? Well, we need to talk about what tax rates are actually in effect in Barbados on international business companies. And what we find is that on the first $5 million of profit, the tax rate is 2.5%. And that used to go down to a tax rate of 1%. But as of 2013, Barbados has cut that all the way down to 0.25%. So a quarter of a percentage point on profits over $15 million a year. That's what international companies pay in Barbados. So when the Conservative member for Brantford-Brant or the Liberal member from Sudbury give us these textbook explanations about avoiding double taxation, we have to talk about what's really happening in Barbados. So certainly it makes sense that if a Canadian company actually pays a decent amount of tax somewhere and then repatriates profits back home, that they don't again pay Canadian tax on that same money. Fair enough. But is the position of the Conservatives and the Liberals in this debate that when a Canadian company pays a tax rate of 0.25% in Barbados, that, yeah, sure, that's good enough, they've paid their fair share of tax, they shouldn't owe any more Canadian tax on that money? Because it seemed that that's what we heard from the previous speakers. So there is absolutely a very serious problem here of Barbados being a tax haven, and it really doesn't make sense to exempt profits repatriated from that country from Canadian tax. Now, the next issue is how big a problem is it? Because maybe there's a little loophole there, but if Canadian companies aren't really taking advantage of it, we wouldn't worry. The member for Mount Royal tried to suggest that, well, there's all kinds of different tax havens out there, so why focus on Barbados? Well, I'll tell you why. Because if you look at Statistics Canada's figures on foreign direct investment positions, we find that most of Canada's foreign direct investment is in the United States, as one would expect. But the second largest Canadian foreign direct investment position in the world is in Barbados. $71 billion in Barbados. So why is that? Well, Barbados is a pretty small country. Its GDP is maybe something like 5 billion Canadian dollars. So why would we be parking $71 billion in an economy of that size? We haven't heard an answer to that this evening, Madam Speaker, and I think it's obvious that Barbados is just being used as a tax shelter. Why would Canadian companies be investing more in Barbados than, say, in the United Kingdom, the third largest country for Canadian foreign direct investment, which, of course, has an actual economy, and there's things there that corporate Canada might actually want to invest in. So there's a real big issue with Barbados. It's not to say that there aren't other tax havens, but clearly Barbados is the biggest tax haven being abused by corporate Canada. So we have to start somewhere, and it makes sense to start with the biggest part of the problem, which is exactly what this excellent motion from my colleague from Joliet proposes. Now, the third issue that we need to address here is what is the government doing about this very serious and very large problem? Well, we got in speeches from the Liberals a lot of talk about all the good measures in the budget to deal with tax evasion. And indeed, the budget documents use the term tax evasion about a dozen times. And they even use the term tax avoidance about half a dozen times. A word that doesn't appear in the budget at all, Madam Speaker, is Barbados. So we're going to fight tax evasion. without even talking about the largest source of tax evasion and tax avoidance. That's a very major problem, and that's the reason why members of this House need to vote in favour of the motion presented by my colleague from Joliet. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. And